Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Read to Inspire podcast. I am Sibongiseni, your host. Today, in this episode, I am joined by Dr. Nomvuselelo Songelwa, who is known as Dr. Mvusi. She is a life coach, a president of one of the online Toastmasters club in South Africa called Visionary Readers Toastmasters Club. And of course, she's an author of 2 books, and I believe there are more coming. But today we'll be talking about her first book called Life Lessons of a Cattle Header, Reflections from the Boardroom. Doc, let me start by welcoming you to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate your invitation. Yeah.
You are welcome, Doc. You are welcome. So I have quite a number of questions that I want to ask in relation to your book. But before we get there, I want to start with, as you know, in this podcast, we are all about promoting the culture of reading within the African continent and beyond. That's basically our mission. So my first question to you is, when did you start reading books outside of the academic space, and why do you think reading is important?
Okay. I know you with tricky questions. I actually started reading books from the Bible when I was 4 with my grandmother. I had to memorize all the Psalms. And when they had this umanyano kind of thing, they would actually, the elderly people, I think they were my age at the time, they would give me the Bible to read. So and obviously through schooling, but I actually just really enjoyed reading some fiction or inspiring books outside academia, because I just wanted, when you want to be light or you want to be inspired. So I do read life books, Brent Brown, also the African books as well. I think reading is very important. For me, I see reading as, it's like touring, because I also I love tourism. I've been in the industry for too long. So you kind of like get different perspectives of how people think, how the different world perspectives, different truths. You kind of like question other things. Obviously, I really actually even read the books that irk my core, just to find out why are people thinking this way. So for me, it's like tourism, and obviously you learn from art, from that, the art of writing. I mean, authors, they have different, I don't know, it's genres like music, but you kind of get inspired about what people put on paper. So it's very important. It's an exposure. You learn beyond what your parents and what you will learn from your own community. You can go global, you can read global books, and by people, painting these scenarios and whatever you imagine, the areas that you've never been. So it's important to actually do that.
That's absolutely true. And as you have mentioned, I just got reminded of a quote. I think it was Stephen King or Stephen Hawking, when he was speaking about you as a reader. I'm paraphrasing. He mentioned something along the lines of, imagine having to travel the world while you are still sitting at the comfort of your own home. Because books open your mind to that sense, even open your world. You get to know different parts of the world just by reading books from authors or by authors that are in different parts of the world. So that's the traveling part when it comes to reading. All right. Thanks, Doc. Now, before we go inside the book, I'm just curious to find out what or how did the idea of your book come about? What or who inspired you to write this book?
I must actually say, I had always wanted to write a book, but obviously you kind of like, is it worth writing, But I was really inspired by Paul Daphne, may his soul rest in peace, who was my supervisor. When my father passed on, as far back as 2011, he actually went to the funeral. And when he saw where I come from, because he knows me from the boardroom, so when he saw where I come from, the rural areas, and I was comfortable, obviously, with home, engaging with rural people, all the makotis that were around the, you call it Imbiza, what is it? Eziko.
Okay.
Eziko, yeah. Eziko, I don't know what Eziko is.
I also don't know. Okay, but I know what is Eziko. Thank God I'm closer.
So to the readers out there, it's like when in the rural areas, then we cook outside. So then you have this community of women that are cooking with the big 3 pots. So I would actually be moving from there to the crawl. Why do I go to the crawl? It's because I'm the eldest and I'm a son, whatever. So to the crawl, I will be called somewhere. I may have to make decisions and everything else. So he actually then, when I came back, and then he said, you must just write episodes of your life. I could not imagine seeing you in that setup and the Mvusi that I know in the boardroom, who is, cracking the whip and whatever. And I think it took some time from there. But basically, the reason why I wrote the book, it was just during COVID. And at the time, I was starting to do some training on coaching. And I was starting to think about, you know what? There are demons I haven't actually faced. I have lingering pain that I have from childhood in my life. And I need to free myself if I want to really transform into this new journey. Because coaching is about that. You can't engage others without going through that. And I thought, no, let me pen something down. Let me be vulnerable. And I knew that writing about yourself, there are other people who were part of your life that might have a different view. But I kind of like say, if you have a different view, write your own book. I will write it from my own perspective. So that's the first part. But the second part was also like, I just thought that by writing the book, I might be inspiring others to write their own story, because it's worth every story. Worth into. Yeah.
That is so true. And speaking about writing about yourself and your own story, as I was reading the book, I made an assumption that is probably an autobiography, this book, but I believe it's more than that. And also, as you read through the book, you realize it's about leadership. You spoke about boardroom just now. And I want us to go back a little bit so that people, as we proceed with this conversation, can have a better perspective of what we are talking about by starting with your background. So let me take you back to where you were born, your upbringing, and also how did you become Umalusi, the kettle header? Maybe where you were born. Talk to us briefly about your upbringing and where you were born and where you are now currently.
Oh my goodness. How do we shorten the 57-year-old life? Wow. But for me, and I think that's what I refer to the book. The pillar of my strength has been my grandmother. Those are the good memories that I remember, where I was an angel, you know, I was this queen, I was everything. And I spent quality time with her, and I was the only daughter, granddaughter who was staying with her. So unfortunately, my grandmother passed on, and my mother at the time wasn't staying with me, was staying with my father in Stilfontein, because my father was a male nurse there in the Duff Scott Hospital. So I immediately after she passed on, I was, taken to stay with my umomncinci. No, it's like, what is it? This uncle thing in English doesn't.
Yeah, but that's
Because
what
I
they
would
call
say,
it in English, whether it's from your mother's side, your father's side, it's uncles and
yeah,
aunts. Uncle, there's no, yeah.
differentiation. But here it was from my paternal side. So Tatomncinci loved me, didn't have children of his own within the wedlock. So, but I had a very difficult time staying there with my mom. You know, really, yeah, when I think about it, yes, I have forgotten now. She is there as our mother now that the mother has passed on. But I had a very difficult time staying with her. Emotionally, I was really abused, and physically, by her in particular. And hiding everything from that. So it was a very difficult time. And I was saved by my aunt, the part of the paternal sister, one time, of the paternal side. One time, Utadobao came back from Cape Town, was in Cape Town, and the sister, they came to stay in the house. And I think they actually saw how things were, and they wrote a letter to my parents, and then I was moved. The following year, I was staying in Umtata at the time. Then I moved to, my parents actually, they took me to Stilfontein with them, from rural areas to a township. Then I went to a township in Kuma location. Oh, it was the first time I was there with my parents. It was nice, da 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 da. But I think my father didn't want to raise her daughter. I was her only daughter there. I don't know if I was naughty, but I was clever. That's what I know. But he was worried about me being in the township. And they actually decided the following year I have to go back to the rural area. So I had to look after the homestead. So who was staying there? It was his sister. Oh, I had a very loving alcoholic aunt, she didn't have time to cook. She would go out and sell umqombothi, traditional beer with other people. Or when there's umgidi, and then she would bring me those slice of baked. I remember those fond memories. But all I know is that she loved me. But she was that's the and I think that is the time that I really had to lead myself, to look after myself, and unfortunately, she also passed on, and my parents didn't have any chance but to hire somebody to stay with me. So I was looking, my household was like two huts. The one was for cooking, and I was sleeping there in the one that's the kitchen, Rondavel, and the other Rondavel was like a bedroom for the adults. Yeah. So my father would come back, excuse me, once a year. I think it was probably his leave. And that's the time I would have quality time with my father, talking about everything, what I want to do, where we are now, his own dreams, how I should look after myself, all those kind of things. So I became a decision maker at that time. And then within 2 years, there were cattle in my crow. And the fondest memory was when he brought the jerseys, and those were the only colorful cows, if I can say that. They call them white cows at the village, and I named them. I made it a point. I named them in English. I had Brown, Twist,
Those
Brave,
names are
and
in the
whatever.
book. Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah. So I really, on reflection, when I was writing, I was kind of like, cattle herding taught me to lead.
Yes.
Cattle herding taught me to lead. That's the time when I know how to negotiate. If you don't assist me to dip, you're not going to actually get assistance during the plowing season. You don't come to me and ask for my cattle. That was that, and it didn't matter whether you were a family member or whatever. I called the shots. There were no elders in my household. And unfortunately, even that time, our helper, we didn't go on well with my helper at all. It was absolutely terrible. But I had the community, I always say, I had the boys who were my friends, they protected me. And at the time, the rural areas were safer spaces, So they also taught me, please don't don't play with the boys, and they were very protective. I also had some extended families who would look after me, teachers, because I was a little bit clever.
Yeah.
So anything I needed, yes, I would get from the community. So that is actually why I always, even today, say whatever I do, I carry my community on my shoulders.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you just reminded me of the saying, or I should say African proverb, that says it takes a village to raise a child. And that's the idea I also got as I was reading through your book. And the things that you have mentioned with your helper, especially in your book, you are very transparent and raw and, are being vulnerable, as you were saying, telling all your story as you were growing up. And I must thank you for that and commend you for telling your truth. And I think writing, some people, they see it as, therapy. You get to heal as you pen down your story and penning down all your traumatic experiences growing up. So I'm sure as you're writing the book, there was some level of healing that you have achieved. So congratulations once again on this achievement. Now, Doc, let's shift slowly but surely to the subject of leadership. But before we dive into it, in your book, I'm not sure if you were influenced by your father being into, the health sector, but I'm curious to find out, growing up, you had a passion of becoming a doctor, a medical doctor. You are now an academic doctor. Tell us what inspired that and what made the change?
They say sometimes you actually have to make some decisions. I, as you say, I really wanted to be a medical doctor, inspired by my father. In fact, I did a BSc as my junior degree. So I failed chemistry 1. And then when I failed chemistry 1, then I had to finish, because then you would do pre-med. And then we would go to Medunsa, if you recall. I can't remember what is Medunsa called now, but it was one of those black medical schools that we would all go to. So I failed, and then I just continued to do my BSc, and then I moved to BSc education. But when I finished my BSc, I was smitten by this young man. And I don't know. We always joked. I can't remember when he actually said, "Marry me," but all I knew was that the Malumes had gone to Lobola, and then and I had a bursary just a day before I had to go.
Yeah.
I made a decision. After all the discussion and influencing from other people, you leave your husband, and the husband was like, "Listen, leaving me for 6 years." I made stupidly that decision. Maybe at the time it was the right decision, because if I hadn't done that, probably I wouldn't have had the beautiful children that I do have. So I then decided, okay, now I'm going to continue and do science education. But I decided, for whatever reason, there will be a name, a DR
Yeah.
next to my name, and
It's there now.
You will be surprised that I still really think that if I would get an opportunity, I would go for medical school, even now at my age.
Wow, that is so beautiful, Doc. And they say imfundo ayigugelwa in our language. So yeah, it's never too late. Even now at the age of 57, you can even start at age 70. There's no pressure though.
Yeah, if
All
they
right.
can give me a battery.
Yeah. Okay, let's
Yeah.
move along, Doc. My next question now, I want to take us back a bit before we dive into your university life. You spoke about doing your BSc in university, and then there were other degrees that followed. But to take you back a bit, you spoke about you as a cattle header having to learn how to tame cattle, to use them to plow for cultural purposes, and to train them or to tame them for milking purposes. You are doing all those things in your book. You even refer yourself as a tomboy at the time. I just want to find out
Wow.
all those experiences, because it was fascinating to hear that story, especially from the female telling all of those stories. Because as someone who grew up in rural areas, it was the job of us as boys to do all those things. But to mention something interesting in all those experiences, that you learn something about project management and leadership in those experiences. Can you tell us more of how you learned about those two skills as you were growing in those experiences?
And it goes beyond the risks, if and a lot of us will know, African people, that cattle are assets.
Yes.
So there wasn't, money wasn't the value of a man, was determined by how big the kraal was.
Wow.
So for me, this value was me. I was like, on behalf of my father. So when I had 19 cattle, in a kraal, and had boys coming to assist to milk in the morning and in the evening, and then they take some buckets of milk for their own homes or whatever. That was the kind of people management. I know who I must give to who, to which cow. I know whom to trust, I know the strengths of even the cattle. Let's talk about the cattle. When you are about to plow, you actually know, okay, you have to rotate this cattle. Okay, if I've given Sibongiseni, Brown, and whoever, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the other person the other ones, and also determining whether they are going to plow the garden or they're going to the field. For myself, because we had a garden and then the field. So you actually know which cows to actually put in front and which ones should be at the back. You know which one is lazy. You know which one is naughty. You kind of like all the time. Also, just making it a point. There's time to discipline, but there's also time to reward. Know. Do you know ilikelenkomo? I don't know what they call it, but you would buy something that you would, for the cow to. It was not lucerne, man. It's like a block.
Salty, and then the cows would lick.
Yes, yes. Yes, and so project management is really about that. It's about knowing which of in your team who is stronger, who is weaker, and you want a project to be done. You are going to pair those that are going to complement each other. You're also going to make it a point that when to not only to feed the team to prepare for the next project. You also know okay, now when should I discipline this one? When should I not discipline this one? When should I look after this one? There might be something wrong with this one. I know the character of this cow. Why is it like this? So you really pay attention to individuals. You pay attention to the collective, but you always make it a point that they pair together. Because even if when they go to the field, you will always find them in groups. They don't go very far from each other. So if I go out there and I see the other one, I can actually call the other one and I can see the other one is there, unless there is that one naughty one that you always know this one is a loner or whatever. So yes, project management is about that. And when you deep, everything else, all the activities that you do, you know when to get the best behavior from each. It's about pulling also other people from outside. Project management, you can be a leader, but you can be a follower sometimes. You are able to actually get wisdom from other people when you have a problem. I take it you can be a project leader, and then you have a supervisor or a sponsor, you kind of like go back to and like ask questions. What do I do in questions like this or whatever? So it taught me how to lead. It taught me how to negotiate. That's part of project management.
Yeah, that is incredible, Doc. And in addition to what you have just mentioned now, I think it's safe to say you learned earlier on in your life through cattle heading about teamwork, about collaboration, about delegation as part of the things that you need to know, especially if you are managing a project or if you are a leader. So that's beautiful to hear. It's fascinating also because I've interacted with a lot of guys who had the same experiences as me and you growing up herding cattle. But to analyze that experience the same way you do, it's just fascinating. I've never heard of it apart and until I read your book, to be honest. So thank you for giving me that perspective about cattle herding, and this is beautiful. Right, so now let's move forward a bit and talk about your university life. Quite impressive, I must say. First and foremost, when I learned, I didn't know you are, I don't want to say old, but you've been on this earth quite for some time. I mean, you started university in 1983. I was not even born at that time. I was born late in the 80s. But this is early in the 80s. And you admitted at Bush University. My first question was, where is Bush University? Can you enlighten us? Where is that?
Yeah. It's I think the university's names have changed so much. My first, as I said, university life was at UNITA. They called it WUSU now, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Walter Sisulu, yes. That's where I did my BSc, and I had some, a totally different experience from a rural area. Was the first time that you actually met a lot of people from different worlds. You would know that a lot of people from Port Elizabeth and Cape Town, because it was that time of the political riots, they would send their children into those universities, the Black universities. So yeah, it's you. I felt small, but interestingly, for some reason, people thought I was rich because of the people that I associated myself with.
Okay. All right, Doc. I must say your CV is very impressive, especially when it comes to the universities that are in your CV. I mean, you've just mentioned now you started at UNITRA, which is now University of
Western Cape.
Yeah. Then from there you went to the University of Western Cape. From the
Cape,
University of Western Cape, you went to Wits University. Then from Wits, you went to Cornell University in the US. Then afterwards, you also had an experience at Oxford University in London. My question is, okay, you mentioned at UNITRA, you got your BSc degree. What degree did you get in other universities?
Oh, in Western Cape, at UNITRA, I actually did the junior degree, and then did a higher diploma in education and the master's in education.
Okay.
And then I went to Western Cape. When I was in Western Cape, I was influenced because my husband was studying in Western Cape, so we decided to move to Cape Town. And it was that time when the world was opening for us, the homelanders. So we went. I was in the Western Cape. I did my Master of Philosophy there, and then I moved. My education is juxtaposed with work situations, interestingly. And if you look at what I have studied, sometimes it's not what I actually did professionally.
Okay.
And then I went to the University of the North to teach, and I went back to when I was employed within SANParks.
Okay.
Then I wanted to do environmental education, and I got a bursary, and all these things I actually did through scholarships.
Nice.
I never paid for myself. So, and I was afforded that opportunity, and I'm very, very grateful to the man that led the institution I was working in with SANParks, gave me the opportunity. And I was out there for a year, and I did environmental education at Cornell. It was a different experience to be in the States. I had enjoyed it. Yeah. And then I went to Wits. I chose to be at Wits because the way I passed at Cornell, I thought, I just want to prove that I can also, from Bush universities, I can also be admitted at Wits. And it was my choice. I didn't want to go anywhere. So Ford Foundation had given me the opportunity to do my PhD for 3 years. And that's the time I used to do the sandwich program in Zimbabwe and at the University of Oxford, So yeah. So my PhD formally is from Wits, but I was able to move around and do my research at the time.
Oh, great. And you mentioned a lot also like a short stint at Oxford. What was the program about there?
It was part of research. So I went there when I was doing my PhD to kind of like be a visiting scholar.
Or the sandwich program is between Wits and Oxford University?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Doc. Now, I want us to talk more about travel because from what you've just said now, it seems, even from reading from the book, you've been all over the world. But you are so, I don't know, you have to be so modest about this because you don't mention other countries that you've been to. So I just want you to mention at the top of your head, maybe a few countries that maybe have taught you something
Mm.
about the world that you've been to. Few that come to your mind now.
You know, I was fortunate to actually travel throughout the world, even professionally and also academically. You know, those
Mm,
kind of things that you want to you present through a conference, you know, or even professionally where you have to actually go to, there's a congress or something, you know, Japan, you know,
yeah.
I was in Japan, I was in Hong Kong, I was in Philippines. I went to Sierra Leone for holiday there and Gambia because I really wanted to experience the African countries.
Wow.
Ghana, the stint in Ghana. When I was in the States, I took a 33-hour bus because I wanted to see the landscape. 33 hours by bus
Mm,
from the New York upstate to Oklahoma University to see a friend.
mm,
You know, for me, that meeting so many people in the bus, and I realized a lot of Americans, Black Americans, knew more about my history than I did at the time. So you
mm,
engage with them, they ask you about politics and whatever. I was in Miami, Puerto Rico,
yeah.
what else?
The list is
But yeah,
endless. I could tell you've been to so many. All right, Doc. So while we're still talking about travel and having to see different parts of the world, in your book you mentioned something very interesting and true that says travel teaches. So as you travel the world, you get to know a lot of things. What are some
yeah.
of the greatest lessons you have learned from traveling the world?
Yes. You know, we have these prejudices about people,
Mm,
even here in South Africa. It's like, oh, Americans are this, or the Tsonga people are like this, or Zulu people are like this. But it is only when you go and immerse yourself in that experience that you actually know, you know, people, they are just souls, they are spiritual beings, and you connect with them at that level. When even when I went to at the University of the North just to you know for a year, I was there for a year, and I had a very totally different experience. I met Venda people, Tsonga people, the Sotho people. When I was in Golden Gate National Park, it was the same. I couldn't speak Afrikaans, I couldn't speak Sesotho, but I had people that accommodated me for who I am and
mm,
embraced me. I have still, even today, have friends from those places that I went to. So it really teaches you to connect with people at
wow.
a spiritual level.
Mm,
And also it teaches you you the who you are, you know, because you get there, you don't have the support system that you normally have,
mm,
but you learn to actually engage and relate to people, and make decisions that are going to connect
mm,
with your soul for life,
wow.
you know.
Mm,
um, the different cultures, I really enjoyed it. You actually going there, experiencing how people live, the festivities, and why people do the things that they do, the
mm,
way they do things,
yeah.
the food, culinary, you know, tourism,
Yeah.
sports, and whatever. And at the end, you actually just find out that, you know, there's always more similarities than differences.
Wow.
You know, it doesn't matter where people come from, but also that it's very important for us to ask the right questions. Ask people why they do things the way they do before you can start judging them. You know, I was so amazed when I went to America. I mean, I had this glorified place in because of what we see on TV. I'm sorry to say this. I actually found most of them very ignorant. A lot of other people hadn't traveled beyond their states, and they think that Africans are the whole continent is one country. They might know a friend from Ghana, and they say, "I've got a friend from Ghana. Do you know?" Or from Kenya. Or when you speak English, they start asking, where did you learn to speak English? Did you wear shoes when you were going to go to the plane? And you wear lipstick because of how we are portrayed. And that's why for me it's very important to write our own story on a serious note, because I think we have been silenced as a continent, as Africans. We also have some of the people that went to school, like you and me, they perpetuate the narrative and paint the Africans and the power of who we are in a negative light. I mean, when people think of rural people or rural women as powerless, that irks me, because I kind of like, I'm a rural woman, and the women that I grew up with that looked after me, they are actually wiser, because they were leaders, they are leaders. They looked after the community when the husbands were not there. They knew how to protect each other. They knew how to save. They knew how to look after each other's children, despite the fact that, they are seen to be living in poverty. Basically, what is happening now, the world is going rural again. Here they're talking about organic food and da-da-da-da. The things we were asked to actually neglect. Now they're coming to teach us agriculture again. How what? So all those kind of things for me, that actually I kind of like ask these questions when people say this is indigenous knowledge, and I'm like, this is knowledge. Why is it indigenous? Really? It is wisdom. It's not myths and legends. It's if you actually ask more questions, the reason why people tell those stories. It was educational. It was not schooling, it was educating children on how to actually behave, be respectful, whatever, but by storytelling, all those kind of things. So you get to learn. I think I also learned more about myself it gives you confidence. I don't know, when you go away, you come back, you reflect, you come back a better person.
True.
Because you've seen the world, and you were able to find yourself there, and you appreciate more where you come from. When I was in Tanzania and I went to Gambia, I thought, when you see how people live there, you kind of like, I'm glad to be a South African.
Wow.
Because all the things, and I'm not saying that these are right now, but what I could see is that the people in other African countries don't have a right to toy. They've lived,
Wow.
that has been their own experience. Potholes are part of their lives. That in town, in cities, and whatever, things might have changed. The smaller, the SMME business kind of thing, along the road, you have people actually cleaning their streets, and then they know this is their own business. This is their life.
Wow.
Tina, we were never exposed to that. At the end of the day, I think I really, really appreciated my country and where I was born, in my own myself as well, by that exposure,
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you amongst a group of 200 in Oxford, and I was asked to speak on behalf of the 200 people when we were going to be welcomed by the mayor. And I kind of asked myself, what did they see in me? I mean, me, why should I? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You get affirmed in ways that you had never been before, because I think you are yourself when you are out there. You don't have any fear to be judged or whatever. You just so it has taught a lot of things about me, about people, about other countries, and our own prejudices as well, and that I have to embrace people from a spiritual
That's impressive, Doc. Very impressive. And I'm sure other world or global citizens just like you can relate to what you are sharing now. The experiences are the same for anyone who have had a good experience traveling or touring different parts of the world. I want to take you back to the US now. There's a plot twist in the book, honestly, that I didn't see coming. You are in a holiday in Miami, yeah. That's remember very well.
Oh,
And one of the things you've mentioned about traveling is that you get to have a mental clarity in terms of what major decisions you need to make about your life. You are in a holiday having the best time of your life, and then plot twist. I need to go. When I got back home, I need to file for a divorce. How did that happen?
yeah. You know, when they say when you are going through something, you have to be still. That's what they're talking about. And I've learned that where you just have to forget all the noise and not influenced by other people. You kind of like have the time to pray for clarity and like, did I make a right decision? No, I have done this. You know, I had the time to reflect. And I mean, 2 weeks. I had time to reflect, and I was by the beach the whole week on my own. Go to the hotel and kind of like, okay, if I do this, scenario planning of some sort, what they call it. But if I do this, what would it mean? Will I take it? How will I deal with it? Will I be able to explain that if I do this way and whatever? But when I came back, I just thought, I tried. Thank you. I've won the t-shirt.
But the t-shirt.
I've won the t-shirt for 11 years. And for me, it was really divorcing myself, not my children. And that's one of the things that I always say is that I had never wanted to paint my ex-husband and husband badly. It was me, it was my choice. It had, unfortunately, an impact. Any decision that you make has an impact on children. But for me, I had always wanted my children, in fact they still do, the respect their father, because always it's about you will meet somebody that will actually complement you in one stage or the other. I really don't think I made a bad decision. Even then, it was the right decision that I had made when I got married. And I tried it didn't work for me. And I didn't also make any bad decision by actually parting. And I continued to have a civil relationship with the father of my children.
That is beautiful. And the way you explain it, Doc, even now, from the book even, is quite inspiring. And it just made me to reflect back on your journey especially from what you have shared in terms of the leadership and leadership lessons you have learned through you being Umalusi, because one of them was to learn to hone your decision-making skills. So when you had to make this decision later on in your life, you had quite some experiences in terms of making hard decisions. And for you, the way you've written your book, it just shows us the importance of having to reflect in your life and try not to fear what other people are going to say, having to make decisions based on your own beliefs. Because for you, from what I learned in the book, obviously you are an academic doctor. You have been trained academically in different institutions. Some of them are prestigious institutions, also known as Ivy Leagues. So obviously you are quite an intelligent and bright and smart woman who is even now a president of a club. Hopefully one day you'll consider being a president of the country.
Oh,
Right, Doc. My question now is related now to your experience at Toastmasters. And then maybe before we move to that, because it's something that we didn't write about in the book, I want you now, as the last question relating to the book, I'm sure there might be probably, let me not say I'm sure, there might be something that we might have missed that you feel like is important that we haven't covered yet in this conversation, something important that you want the viewers to take away from the book itself.
Yes. You will see from the book what I have done is that I related my own story and then I had reflection questions to take the reader through his or her own experience as they, after they reading the chapter. Because as I've indicated, for me, it was a book to inspire, in particular, the youth from the rural areas, as the tagline of my title, your background doesn't determine your destiny. So that they could relate. I have had feedbacks where people relate to different parts of the book about pain, about parenting, and all those kind of things. So the book is really about sharing those kind of experiences. But for me, honestly, it's as much as it is a healing process for me. It's a transition. It was a transition that if I wanted to actually be a better Mvusi, I needed to deal with the Mvusi and be vulnerable about it, which is something that now I'm actually using in coaching. That you can't even start talking about your vision, your purpose, and whatever, without really dealing with your demons. So I just wanted to highlight that to young leaders. Go out there. Your voice is important. Do not be silenced, because it doesn't matter what you will do, you will always be judged. To your point that you have just made it, your mental wellness is actually very important. So you have to take hard decisions if they are not aligned with your own values.
Wow. That is beautiful. And I think that's something that needs to be emphasized by leaders in all different spheres. I'm saying this because, it's easy to see yourself as a leader, but I think sometimes you forget the basic foundation that determines or that separate a good leader from a great leader. Things like knowing your own values, knowing your own beliefs, having your own vision and a mission in the space or any place you might be leading in as you consider yourself as a leader. I love the fact that you mentioned briefly about those things. If you have values that you operate by, I think you can go far as a leader. So thank you for that. And now, while we're still speaking about leadership, we know that Toastmasters, the tagline is, it's where leaders are made. You are a leader already, and you came in at Toastmasters in less than a year, or maybe within a few months of joining, you are appointed to the highest position, and that is the president and CEO of a club. Tell us, how did you feel about that experience?
I actually didn't know what I was getting myself into. But this is exactly what happens. This is what I was saying to you, is that sometimes there are people that will know you more than you know yourself. You don't know what you are reflecting. Because when I was asked to be part of to lead the group, I thought, okay, yes, I've got my own journey I wanted to go through when I was joining Toastmasters, because I wanted to really focus on my presentation, impactful leadership, impactful, when I speak or I inspire, which is what I always want to do, is to be able to articulate my soul, to go through to the receiver. And that's the main purpose of being here. But I got into it, and I think I was comfortable that we are a young club. Not necessarily the fact that we were born later, but the fact that the club itself is relatively young in the community of Toastmasters. So I was willing to learn, together with the group, which is what is happening. I'm actually an advocate of learning. So
wow.
Imfundo, it's nomfundo siphokazi, khanyisa siphathise, aphiwe uchulumanco. So those are the name of my children.
Wow. Okay, that's beautiful. Okay. I won't do justice if I attempt to translate, because wow.
So imfundo, the whole thing is imfundo sisiphokazi osiphathisiweyo ukuze ukhanyise uphiwe uchulumanco. You know what I'm saying? So that's my mantra, is that I get happier when I read, and when I learn, because then I get more enlightened, So, and that is exactly what's happening within Toastmasters, is that because I'm learning with and even a young team, is it Z or is it a Z? Is it a Z generation?
Gen Z, yeah.
So it's actually very, very, very nice. I'm having fun. And I'm vulnerable. I say I don't know technology. I don't know what to do it, and I have people who are so accommodative and you're like, oh Makulu, okay, we're going to teach you how to do this. Okay, relax. We know this is what you're going to do. So it's just a very fun place. It's a safe space for me to actually learn, and I am hoping that I'm adding value as well to the club. So
definitely,
I'm very grateful, and thank you very much. You are the person who actually the founder of this club, and thank you very much for entrusting me with the opportunity to lead the club, and thank you very much for also mentoring me as well.
You are welcome, Doc. You are welcome. And your contribution is truly appreciated, to be honest. We don't take it for granted. As you said, we are a very diverse club in terms of age. There's like a huge age gap. And for you having to come in, you've brought in a wealth of experience when it comes to leadership. You've said we are relatively a new club. We have chartered this year. We have the word chartered might not be familiar with other people, but it means we have officially came to existence in just March this year. So most of the members of the club are relatively new and they have nothing, they have not, I don't want to say nothing, but they are clueless about what Toastmasters is all about. So having to come in with wealth of experience in leadership, at least now we have a sense of direction, knowing where we are going as a club. And that experience, that's what I'm saying to you, is basically not taken for granted, is appreciated. And there's much more fun now because all of us, even though most of the members are new, at least we know where we're going. We know what are the goals we're trying to accomplish. We have all this mission and vision in place that help us to give us, or maybe to revive our why. Why are we at Toastmasters? For instance, you mentioned for you, you wanted to hone your presentation skills so that you can articulate your soul. That was a beautiful impression, by the way. So that's the beauty of Toastmasters. Most of us, like myself, I came in also for the same reason. And also for me, it was of basically trying to overcome my fear of public speaking. And I'm still a work in progress. And with this podcast, that's another way of learning and training myself to articulate my thoughts and engage with other authors and get to learn from them, their experiences, so that I can apply those skills based on what they have learned into me as well. And speaking about having to learn from other speakers and other authors, I believe as an author, there were books that changed your life for the better, even inspired you to become become an author now. Can you give us maybe 2 or 3 book titles that made a significant impact in your life?
Rising Strong, Brent Brown. That's, it actually just taught me that vulnerability is a strength. Vulnerability is a strength. The other book is, I think it's the ones that come to mind. It's Lean In. Is it Klein? I think so.
Okay. I think Lean In is by, I think she was a CEO at Facebook or something.
Yes, Lean In, yeah. So, those two, it's exactly that. It's this kind of like, sometimes you doubt yourself, and it's like, hey, Lean In, across that boardroom, otherwise you will not who moved my cheese is always like one little book that is very powerful, but it's really teaching you take responsibility, my friend.
Okay, beautiful, Doc. Now, my question now is about, public speaking. My next question, already in Toastmasters, you've delivered a couple of speeches already. So based on what you have learned already at Toastmasters and even before joining, you have delivered talks. I remember at some point last year, you were in the US and you were asking me, based on what I've written in my book, which is about public speaking, some tips as you were delivering that keynote day in one of the universities. On all of those experiences, what would you say now are the 1 or 2 key aspects that one must try to incorporate in their public talk in order to make it impactful and memorable?
Be authentic. Be yourself. Before I used to be in a preparation paralysis mode when I have to deliver a speech, and I read and I kind of chapter by chapter or slide by slide. But what for me, and even when I spoke to you when I was in the US, one of the things that you actually said to me whilst we went through those tools and whatever, but you said, just be yourself, be calm, say what, there is no one who's going to judge you. Remember that you are the only one that knows the subject matter. And that still like says, at that point in time, you're the only one that knows the subject matter. So just be the professor of that subject matter and deliver it, you know. So and in fact, I remember very well. By the way, let me tell you that out of that speech, I became now the council member of that institute.
Beautiful, beautiful. Congratulations, Doc. Wow. Lovely.
You know, because I had the slides, but you know, I was talking to the slides, talking about and that's exactly what for me is most important, and that is what is coming out, is that we all have different ways of others speak quickly, some of us thinking it's closer, and then you kind of like have to translate it in English. You don't have to do the twanging, really, just be yourself.
Exactly.
You know. And that's the first thing, and I think for me, the fact that, and I have seen the evidence of which, when in the last month when I was making presentations with my second book, was actually, you imagine a safe space, and I think that is what is the club is all about. You are in this safe space where you are vulnerable, no one is judging you or whatever, and that is actually what is in my mind when I get to a new space. And I kind of like, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, the most important thing for me also, I was anxious about on evaluations, is this the grammar, the kind of thing, you know, kind of like, yo, how do you deliver a speech without or like, or those kind of things. This is what you get evaluated, and I have seen my growth even through the feedback that I get after each speech, that they're not no one is picking Ukuti, and whatever, because you're authentic, you speak from your heart, you speak from your soul, and you have prepared. That's what for me is also very important. If you have prepared beforehand, it's gonna be very natural for you to talk about this thing, because all your thoughts are just going to come, not necessarily in that order, but you had, you know, but you have a mind map in your, you know, what you're gonna talk about. So preparedness for me is very important as well.
That is so true. Doc, now you've just mentioned about your second book, which I believe is about a month old, right? Also,
yes, I want to show you.
Okay, let's see the cover, because my question now would be, how do we get hold of your first book as well as the new book that you have? I'll share that information in this podcast episode, and I'll share the link. Mention the title and maybe just a summary in just maybe 30 seconds of the book.
It's Lipstick Chronicles. Nice. I get excited when I talk about it, because I'm talking about myself, but there's my experience. It's called Lipstick Chronicles: The Warfare of Inclusion. And this book is born out of my pain.
Wow.
A professional pain that I was kicked out of my CEO position, and I had to be still again, think about, and I was part, you know, in terms of, okay, transforming myself and my career into coaching. So, but out of that, one of the things, the experiences that I had was that when doing coaching other women, I actually saw a trend of people feeling silenced and people hiding emotionally, psychologically, and physically, you know. And then I was curious about this, why are people, and then I thought it was women, and then there were men as well who were talking about, sure, this is how I feel, this is what has happened. And then I kind of I withdrew, and
Wow.
I am not who I am, or I am who I was because of an incident that I happened.
Okay, Doc, I don't want you to reveal too much. I want to get the book
Okay.
myself first. I want to get the book and read it. Tell us now, how do I get hold of that copy as well? And how much is it? And also, how much is the one we just spoke about now? And where do we get these copies?
Okay. Sorry about that. I get so passionate about these things. Life Lessons is Life Lessons is 195.
Okay.
The Lipstick Chronicles is 250. And all these books are self-published, and you can only get them from me.
Okay, beautiful. And then I will be able to share the details of how to contact you basically in this episode.
Yes.
So no problem. All right, Doc, we have run out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I could tell you are very passionate about your subject, and I'm truly looking forward to read your second book, and we'll have another discussion like this one as soon as I finish reading it. Thank you for honoring this time. And for the viewers out there who have watched this episode from the start to the end, we truly appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the button below so that you can be notified for future episodes that will come with other authors, of course. So for now, that's the end of this episode. Goodbye. Right.
Goodbye. Thank you very much for the invitation.